Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the latest bonus episode of the Stephen King podcast. And this time I have with me writer Kelly Charron. Hello, Kelly.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Great, thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. And just for everybody to know, we're re-recording part of the podcast because we had some technical difficulties. So Kelly has graciously agreed to redo it. So thank you for that, Kelly.
No problem. My pleasure.
All righty. So we're talking about Kelly, who has two books out right now. They're both doing with a teenage serial killer. And the first book is called Pretty Wicked. And then the sequel is called Wicked Fallout. And it's just came out just July, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
The book right now, and the full release will be September 5th for the paperback.
Awesome. All right. So, Kelly, if you could tell us some of your background, a little bit about you and how you got interested in writing.
Yeah. So I started writing in 2005 after kind of figuring out that I really loved story. I love plot. I love how you can construct a story and you can give the same example, the same prompt to 10 different people and get 10 totally different things. I thought that was really interesting. Originally, I thought I wanted to be an actor. I thought that was the way I wanted to tell stories in the world. But then I realized, because I always thought, it was really overwhelming to thought writers and authors weren't real people. Like, who were these people who could do this job? And while acting is really obviously hard to get into as well, I just felt a little bit more tangible, local plays and things like that. But then I realized I didn't really want to do it. I had my teenage poetry and journaling and things like that, but nothing really serious. So I decided to start writing in 2005, and I started right out with a novel. When I was younger, my parents weren't big readers. We were a TV and movie family, and that's pretty much another way that I really started to learn to love being put into, the world. Another world with characters and get totally enmeshed in what they were doing. So that's a huge influence for me. I'm still, obviously, I should really be writing all the time. And I'm sitting here watching, numerous series, especially now with, it's the golden age of television with Game of Thrones and The Walking Dead, and it never ends. So
right.
I'm a Netflix girl now and doing all the things. So spending far too much time.
Right. And there was a particular set of TV shows that you gravitated towards, I'm guessing, based on your book?
You would guess right. So, of course, there was Dexter, and I would guess that. That would be a season a day. My husband and I, over, I think, a summer, were watching like crazy. Yes. It was so addictive. You couldn't stop. You'd be like, one more episode, and then that was finished, and it's bedtime, and you're like, just one more. I need to know what's going to happen. That was a really well done show. Obviously, I said The Walking Dead, Game of Thrones. I even gravitated towards some of like Vampire Diaries, the originals, Pretty Little Liars. Basically, any type of thing that has suspense, a thriller aspect, mystery, dead bodies, things like
all those homey, wormy, comfy things. Yes.
Exactly.
And you also mentioned, I believe, that you gravitated towards real life crime stories as well.
Yes. So Investigation Discovery, if you have not watched it, you need to find this channel. But basically, it is murder central. My husband affectionately calls it murder porn, which is a term from South Park, I believe. And so I will be putting on one of my shows, whether it be Killer Kids, which is very disturbing, can I say, but was a big influence on the book Pretty Wicked.
Oh, okay.
There's so many murders among us, like lots. You learn a lot. It's a good education if you're going to write anything about crime. Not to mention the normal 48 hours, 20/20 Dateline. Those are good staples. So,
right. Yeah. And at the same time, when you started writing, or I guess before, you were a big reader as well.
Yeah, I'm a huge reader, always have been. I tended to gravitate towards, I've done the classics. I have an English lit degree. I was a bit too nervous to go right into the creative writing. So I did the English lit and studied story and the mechanics of the craft. So that was good. But I think I was in grade 11 and we had a book report, and the kids in the class were doing a bunch of the classics. We had Little Women, we had Of Mice and Men, and here I am with Stephen King's The Shining. And it was awesome. I think the teacher got a kick out of it. She was trying to hold back her smirk as I was talking about the Overlook Hotel and the creepy twins. It was very good.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other King stories that you enjoyed?
Loved A Good Marriage. Who doesn't love a serial killer? And I think that was made into a movie, or
yes.
Like all are. So I need to watch that.
Yes.
Oh my God, what don't I love? I like a lot of his classics. It really surprised me that his short stories, like Stand By Me and The Shawshank Redemption, like those were him. When I found out those were him, because he can write so diversely.
Yeah.
I was so impressed, and I thought, yeah, that's a career I want to have. somebody who can write in all these different areas. You've got aliens in one story, you've got vampires in another, you've got whatever it might be, and he can do it all. So
yeah, absolutely. As we have all seen by his magnum opus, The Dark Tower, which crosses pretty well every genre, which is just blows my mind. But
I just read the Mr. Mercedes trilogy, and I'm excited for that movie. And yeah.
Yes, yeah, and I'm hearing really good things about that TV series, and they have a fantastic cast too. So that should be something special, as well, of course, as It, which looks just off the hook.
That movie. I don't know what's wrong with me again as a child, but my friends were terrified of clowns. I thought it was hysterical. I loved it. It's like, bring it on. My dad decided, totally unrelated, but my dad decided that most people had collections and my mom should really start to collect something. And he started to buy her these ceramic clown figurines. And it was so wrong. And she didn't have the heart to tell him for like 5 or 6 years that she didn't like them and that they were freaky. So we had a house full of about 30 ceramic clowns, and they were all downstairs. She just shoved them in the basement into the room that no one went in except for me and my friends. So of course, we had a get together with a few girlfriends, and we had It come on. We were like, let's watch It. This is perfect. And so my friend went to the bathroom, and I would move the figurines around so that when she came back, she'd be like, they moved. You did that. And, I don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, I've had some fun with it. Definitely.
That's awesome. I'm just thinking of the newest trailer where the one kid walks into the room with all the clowns. That's pretty awesome. Okay, so you've got all this fuel and you need to burn it off, and you decide to do that through writing. And how did you approach writing? Did you do it formally, informally, with the writing groups, a bit of mix of both, or how?
So I kind of dove into studying the craft first. I was really intimidated and kind of nervous to try to do it. So I did a lot of Writer's Digest magazines. I did YouTube videos watching Anne Rice and Stephen King actually talking about the writing process.
Right.
I read some books on the craft, and then I decided to just try it. I was being a scaredy cat, and I'm not going to get any better unless I'm actually putting the words down. So I did that, and it was okay. I thought it was great. I thought, I'm doing really well. I'm such a natural. It was not the case. I had a friend who was really nice, and he decided to read over my first few chapters and proceeded to point out that I didn't need 5 adverbs per sentence.
Right.
So that was, that was like, oh. So over-explaining it doesn't make you get it better. Got it. So yeah, I honed that and streamlined it. And since then, I'd say the last 6 years that I've been living in Vancouver area, there's a huge writing community here. In Ontario, where I had lived previously, there really wasn't at all. So since I've been out here, I've gone to writing conferences, I've gone to workshops, I found a critique group. I have lots of writing partners that I work with. So I have beta readers that go through, I have editors that I use. And so, yeah, it's an awesome community. Really helps me stay accountable and elevate my work.
Awesome. And do most of your writer friends, do they write in different genres than you? Or
Yeah. Science fiction, romance, young adult thrillers, contemporary, like everything that you could possibly imagine. So
okay, that's actually good. And I assume you have some beta readers as well?
Yes, there's a group of us, and I usually do it. So I'll write a draft. I'll go over it once more myself. I'm really impatient at this stage. I feel like, how can I make it better unless I have feedback?
Yep.
So after the second run through, to make sure it's decent enough to read, I will give it to 1 or 2 people, wait till I get their responses to it, and then I'll make changes and I'll send it out to 2 new people and see what we get. And at that point, usually I'm going to my editor.
Okay. And just for the listeners out there who are writers as well, what's your process in terms of how you do your work? Are you an outliner or a pantser?
I lean more towards pantsing, but I do a combination. So I'd say some books come to me fully formed, so I know exactly what they're going to look like. And Pretty Wicked was very much like that. I knew, kind of like a movie in my head, these are the main like 6 or 7 things I need to happen. And then I kind of free write in between those moments. I do a lot of exploratory writing. So if I feel like I'm not quite sure, I want to get moving, I'll just start working on that book and just start writing chapters. And it's a good way for me to try to learn who the characters are and what they want. I do a lot of outlining. I'll grab a notebook and I will write point forms about who they are or what I need to happen, what would be. For example, in the book I'm writing right now, I need some torture scenes. So I am, as you do. So I am point forming what are some really awful ways to be tortured. So that's what I'm one way that I do it. And then I'll go back later and look and see what I've got and see where I can work those in.
Okay. And your interest in the serial killer that's just keeps jumping out at me, and I'm curious too because you have an awesome last name for a horror writer, which the boatman from the river Styx. So I really like that quite a bit. You're obviously the boatman between reality and fiction. So when you're writing these stories, and I'm particularly interested because I have read your first book, Wicked, or Pretty Wicked, sorry, and your setting for this story and the protagonist, or maybe it's the antagonist. I don't know how you think of her.
She is my protagonist. Her, the detective, is the antagonist, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
She is. You base the story in the States, and so I'm just wondering how you came with the setting. Was there any reason why you, as a Canadian, you didn't set it in Canada, and the genesis of how you developed the story?
When I started writing that book about 4 years ago, I would say, I have a few friends who have been Big Five published, and basically were telling me it's a lot easier to break in or to get readership if you base your book in an American city.
Okay.
I chose Colorado as the backdrop, but I made up a fictional town within because I thought that would be easier and I didn't have to waste as much time researching, is there really a 7-Eleven on this corner? Is there really a Starbucks on this street? Is this a real street? So I didn't want to be tied down by that kind of stuff. And I like the idea when I read books that there's a fictional places. I find that to be a little bit more exciting and interesting to me, to be lost into the story if I'm not thinking about what I know of as New York, for example. I like that. So yeah, so that was part of it. Ryann came to me years before I wrote her, and I just thought it'd be fascinating to dissect a villain and give them a point of view in a book.
Right.
If we do get a villain, it's usually, and I love the story Wicked, but it's always, I'm misunderstood. I'm really not as bad as you think I am. I'm a misunderstood character. I have my own backstory. I have my own reasons and why that I am this way that I am, and feel sorry for me. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted my character to be the villain in a way. Like she doesn't think she is, though. She is the hero of her own story. And she, I just wanted her to be as true to what a psychopath or a sociopath, however you want to look at her, would be. So yeah, I wanted to keep her as true as I could to that type of character and personality and go with it and just do something that I haven't seen a lot of.
Right. And now knowing a little bit of your background in education and so forth, because I was curious as to how you were able to tap into the mind of a teenage girl so well. At least from my perspective, I'm like a 60-year-old guy, so
I was a teenage girl, so that helped.
Yes.
Other than that, I did. Yes, I had a social work background, and I worked as a youth outreach worker, and I worked with a lot of kids, and majority of them were really at risk. And in my education, I had to study a lot of personality disorders. And as you know, the borderline personality and the psychosis, schizophrenia, psychopathy, that kind of really stuck out to me as being very, very interesting. And I did come across a few kids who I thought, wow, there's a big disconnection. There's no empathy. There's not a lot happening there. And one in particular really fit the markers for what a sociopath looks like. And not all sociopaths become killers. I would say 99% of them, are doctors or CEOs or, whatever that we know of, that high power, are able to fire a lot of people, are able to handle a lot of stress, or are able to have, why we love a surgeon who has a bit of a God complex, because who else can cut open to a person and do the things that they do? So, it can be for a good benefit, but for those very slight group of people where it doesn't go that way, it goes horribly wrong, then that was where I was interested to take the story.
Right. What I'm also really curious about is people, when they read YA stories and that, and who are not of the age group or whatever, or in movies, they complain about teenagers are always mopey and self-absorbed and stuff like that. And that plays out in the book to a certain degree. But at first I really is she going to be like this whiny teenager for the whole book? But then it's something developed in the book that aspect of her character actually played into her worldview in terms of her ability to be a serial killer, and that sort of turned that on its head for me, and that actually became really fascinating. Was that something that you consciously were aiming for, or was that just something that happened organically? I
think it was organic, because knowing who Ryann is as a character, I thought she is bitter, she is grumpy, because she's being thwarted. She wants to be who she wants to be, and she knows, she's smart enough to know that can't happen. She doesn't live in a society where this kind of thing is acceptable or in any way. She knows would be deemed a freak or whatever would happen to her. So
Right.
she is feeling so stifled, and she does have that. But it's not the typical mopey of he didn't call me back. Her angle is looking at people and seeing what they can do for her, what she can get out of them, how she can use them, what can, be. She has some genuine relationships in there.
Yep.
But for the most part, it's very calculated for her. Everything, life's a game.
Yeah. And then you take that, and the book much becomes the spinning plate scenario where she keeps thinking that she can get away with all these things, but then things start to get complicated, and she's trying to spin 3 or 4 plates at the same time and keep her story straight with everyone, which really drew me into the story and gives the story a great pace. So I really think the book is really well paced, and I was totally absorbed into it once I got past maybe the third waypoint. I thought, there's no way that she's going to get away with all of this. Even though her dad's a cop and she knows cop procedures, she has a very naive worldview as well. So she's doing these things and comparing herself to her heroes, which are serial killers. So she wants to be a part of that pantheon. So the book really has an awesome pace. So that must have been a lot of fun for you to write.
It was so fun, which I should feel ashamed about, because what nice Canadian raised Catholic girl writes that? But me.
Yeah.
No, it was. My mom always jokes, and she's like, "What did we do? I don't understand this." And I actually just got a phone call from my sister who still lives in Ontario, and she says, "You have to tell me, Ryan's me, isn't it? It's me." My friend said it, and they said, "This is you." And I'm like, "Oh my God." Or people think I was really angry.
Right.
Where's this coming from? Yeah, no, it was more fun than it should have been, because, it is make believe, and why not go with it? Why not see? My life has been pretty vanilla. I've been really fortunate and lucky to have a very happy, fulfilling time. So I think that's why I can safely delve into the dark parts of the world and kind of explore that a little bit. I find it really fascinating. Human psychology and motivation is just, for me, really key.
Yes. And the story actually leaves off at a point where I don't know if that was intentional again, or if you were already thinking beyond this book, that sets up a sequel pretty well.
I wasn't sure if I was done with her. I wanted to keep it.
Right.
It could have been a standalone, and I would have been okay with that. But I got such good feedback from the first book that I thought they were like, "We want more Ryann." So I was like, I can easily do that. No problem. I really, liked being with her and thought I definitely have more stories.
Right.
So for now I have the sequel, and I'm okay if it's a duology. I have thoughts and I have things plotted for a third if need be, but I'm going to kind of see what happens.
Okay. And the first book takes place when she's 15 years old, and the second book takes place 12 years later. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So what was your thought process about putting that much of a distance between the two books?
Well, I kind of, at that point, I was writing mature young adult. You're capped with certain things that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought maybe I want to write it in an adult genre so that I can have a little bit more freedom.
Right.
Turns out I didn't really need that kind of freedom, because there's nothing so bad in that book that I, couldn't have a kid read it. They'd be fine too. But I really wanted to explore who she was with time having gone by.
Right.
What became of her? How did she grow? How did she not grow? That kind of thing. So it was really fun to revisit her. And I don't think in the areas that you would expect her to change that she's changed that much.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a spoiler to say that she's in prison.
Right.
So that on the back of the book when we read it. So I think in some of the research that I've done, teenagers who are incarcerated, the longer that they're in, obviously, they're kind of the maturity, their growth is stunted because they're not in an environment that can really help them flourish in any way. So
right.
I feel like she wouldn't have grown too far past where she was. So it was interesting to have her have a lot of the 15-year-old her, but really trying to be this 27, 28-year-old woman now.
Okay. And without getting too much into spoilers, does it also, the sequel, examine the impact that it's had on her family?
Yes, it does.
The mother, father, and daughter?
You see all the mother, father, and sister. We do see them all in the sequel for sure. And we do see some of her friends, the people she left behind, the people that, were reeling after they figured out who she was and what she's done, and her friends. So yeah, we get to peek into all of their lives a little bit.
Well, that's awesome. I'm looking forward to reading it. And
thank you.
Is there any Silence of the Lambs influences in your sequel, or would that be?
You're the second person to say that. And it's
Oh,
a favorite movie of mine.
of course.
Of course. How can not? Hannibal Lecter is iconic. How can we not love him? And that was a feeling that I wanted, was when we're watching that or reading that, you shouldn't be rooting for the bad guy, but he's so charismatic.
Exactly.
And he's so charming and light that you kind of think, yeah, kind of want to see what he does next. He's not the protagonist in the story, but he does carry a huge part. He's the draw. And so I kind of wanted Ryann to be that version where first book you're in Ryan's point of view the entire book. And in the second book, I split the book up. So we have Ryann for half the book, and we have Dr. Nancy Clayfin, who is the forensic psychiatrist who is evaluating her.
Okay.
So we have the two of them kind of this cat and mouse thing going on between them. And it was fun for me to write maybe a normal character opposite her to see how they play on each other instead of just being in one head. So that was fun. So a little bit of Starling, a little bit of Lecter, but in a much calmer. There's no people, so.
Well, you've really whet my appetite to read the sequel, and I'm looking forward to doing that. So, is there anything else you wanted to say about that series before we start talking about some of your other works? Or
I'm just still really, really excited about it. Like I said, I have other ideas for Ryann, and I just hope people give it a chance for something different. I think some people are off-put being in the mind of a killer. I had some feedback from people saying, it was really hard and it was kind of scary to be in her head, but I loved it. Like, it was so different. So I know it might be a little bit like, I don't know if I want to spend 400 pages in the head of a 15-year-old girl who wants to kill people, but you never know. Might want to give it a shot.
Yeah, I highly recommend it to anybody who's interested in that type of story. And I am surprised that it is labeled as a YA book, though. You mentioned that there's a dark YA, but there's so many subcategories of YA nowadays. I guess that's possible. But
I find with young adult, you can do almost anything as long as there's not gratuitous sex. So I feel like you're pretty good. And that's why I made sure I put like a warning label basically on it, like preferably 16 and up, because I feel most teenagers are watching Dexter. They have watched murder television. They are not shy to hear what's going on. I mean, I think back to the really sad story of those two little girls somewhere, I forget where in the States, but the Slender Man killing, or not killing, sorry, they attempted to murder their friend. I don't know if you're aware of that story, but they were 12. And they lured their other 12-year-old friend after a sleepover into the woods, and they stabbed her.
Right. Yes.
So these kids, unfortunately, are aware of a lot of things, because I really went back and forth on feeling, was it responsible for me to write this? I felt really like, it is just a story, just like we get movies, just like we get TV shows that explore these really dark things, and hopefully you'll look at it as just fiction and walk away from it. I remember when Stephen King, he had a book, and forgive me, you'll probably remember the name of it. I can't remember right now because I've not read it, because he took it,
Rage.
Yeah, Rage, with the school shooting, right? So, and you can't find that anymore. And he kind of regretted, I think, writing that book. So I did struggle with that. And I talked to quite a few people about like how they viewed it or how they felt. And they were all like, it's fine. There's worse. You're good. So I was like, all right. I thought about having that little warning though, like graphic content, 16 and up. So felt like, there we go.
And have you ever, I don't know, did you ever get like feedback from the stores or anything, or complaints or anything, or was it?
No. Well, so there's one store near here called, well, I won't say the name, but it's a kids bookstore. They also carry an adult section. They have an adult section. So they looked at it and they were like, we really like it, but we're going to pass. Understandably, they have tons of like middle graders and stuff coming in there all the time. So they probably didn't want, the cover is a silhouette of a girl holding a knife. So they probably thought maybe not the best thing to have in there. But the Indigos and Chapters have had no problems, and they're holding signings and they're carrying it, and everything is great.
Okay, cool. Yeah. All right. So turning to your other books, which would you like to talk about? You have two other series, I believe? I have
partial series, yes. So I have the first book I wrote was an urban fantasy, a young adult, and it was far too long. I was learning on that book. I still really love it. I'm hoping to be able to fix it and put it out there. I've had some people, because I have it on my website as things that I'm working on, and so I've had some emails from people saying they want it. So that's really nice and sweet, but it's not ready. So
which one is that? Sorry?
It's called Darkest Shadow. So there's a supernatural element, and it's there's magic in it. So I'm really a big fan of that kind of genre as well. Love urban fantasy, love magic.
Right.
It's definitely not a Harry Potter, that is for sure. It is a little bit darker than that. And malevolent spirits, whatnot, So,
is it kind of like any echoes of the Dresden series? Or
I've not read the Dresden series.
Oh, well, if you like urban fantasy, then you got to read that series.
Okay. It's on the list. The list is so long.
I know. It's
I have 150 books sitting here right now that I have to.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
It is. So I started to write the sequel to that because I thought I need to write the sequel. And then I stopped halfway and I thought, I'm not sure if I'm even ready to want to fix the first book right now. I need to write something different. And that's when I wrote Pretty Wicked. Okay. And I actually wrote Pretty Wicked, the first draft, in 6 weeks. It was a quick one. It was good.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and then I put that down and I started to write a young adult urban fantasy series based on a boarding school with witches. And what this book is, it's nothing Harry Potter-ish. It's not known. The witch culture is very underground, literally. They actually have a cavern under the school where the coven does their stuff. And it is a lot of adults running the show, very corrupt adults. Of course, there's murder and there's magic. And this one girl gets swept into this clique of all witches. And she has no idea who they are or what's happening. And nonsense and murder ensues as it does.
And this is the Wild Magic series?
Yes.
Okay. Because I like your log line on the site. I think the craft meets the skulls.
Yes, very much. So very secret society plus, your magic and your twisted kind of, It's like a nightmare of the popular clique, but they have magical abilities, which can make the rest of the life for students even worse. So it's like, don't cross me because you don't know what I'm going to end up doing to you. So my main character has to find her sense that she's been kind of abandoned. Her father has died. She's moved away to this boarding school. She doesn't have anybody. This group takes a liking to her like a pet. They bring her in, and unbeknownst to her, they're witches. And she finds out a little bit too late after some other things happen in the school, and she pretty much has nobody else. And it's kind of she has a moral crisis of trying to, does she stay with these people who want to protect her and defend her, but they do bad things? Or does she go against them and reap the consequence of that? So.
Wow. You like to write big, eh?
I guess so. That one in my mind, I was like, that's 6 books. That series is 6 books. There's only one right now written.
All right. So that answers my next question a bit about what your future plans are.
Yeah, I love to write widely, but you always hear, if you're a writer, you hear all the time, you should really stick to one genre. You should, especially if you have under one pen name, so readers don't get confused. And again, I look at someone like Stephen King and I think, look at all the things that you write. Mm-hmm. And then I hear the feedback of, well, you are not Stephen King. So, and that's so true. So I'm like, I would love to keep writing different things, but right now people are like, stay with your brand and keep writing thrillers.
Right.
I am writing a new adult thriller that I'm super excited about, and that's taking up my time right now. So yeah, hopefully that all goes as easily as writing some of the other ones have.
Cool. Well, I wish you would all success with that. I mean, I really like, I don't know if you've read any Sarah Pinborough. She does, she does a lot of thriller stuff too. And I really liked her last book. It just really blew me away. There's a lot of good thrillers coming out right now. So it's not just the golden age of television. It's the golden age of books right now too, I think. And
it's true. I kind of always worry. I talked to my one friend. She's been published for the last 12 years with Simon & Schuster and HarperCollins and whatnot. We were talking because she does write thriller, and she's like, I really hope we've been doing Gone Girl, I think was about 6 years ago now. And we've been steady with the thrillers and all the girl books, The Girl on the Train, and all the ones like that have that famous word in their title that make it want to sell right away.
Yeah.
And I'm worrying it's going to, take a dive soon, and it freaks me out because I love thrillers, and I'm like, don't stop producing these at this rate, keep them coming. So
yeah. I don't know. I think thrillers will be around, but I do think like The Girl Who fill in the blank. I think those kind of titles will go, will fall off, but we'll see. It's interesting because you just mentioned Simon & Schuster. What's your publishing position right now? Or did you start out doing self-published, or did you land a book deal right away? Or
no. So what happened was I was querying Pretty Wicked, and I was getting amazing feedback. It was so great. I had a lot of hope, but basically I got the same response. I had about 15 fulls go out, and the same response from every agent was, "This is too dark for YA. I can't sell this. You're not quite young adult. You're not quite adult. Right. I can't this in a box. You should probably self-publish it. And so I did.
Ah.
I didn't see it sit on a shelf. And actually, that's partly why the second book got even written. I was at a writing conference and I was pitching Pretty Wicked to an agent and an editor separately. And they both said to me, wow, I'd really love this if you would make it an adult book. You can keep her a teenager, but I want more sex, more grit, more whatever as an adult. So I thought, okay. And I did start to write it. And I was about halfway when I thought, you know what? No, I can't not have the book see the world the way that I wrote it. I want her to be a teenager and I want it to be this way. I don't want to have to change it. I don't want to get rid of her friends' points of view and her being at parties and her doing the teenage things because I liked that balance of where she was.
Right.
So I changed the book and made it the sequel. So
nice.
I changed storyline and I did some work on it. And I thought, why can't she be an adult? But now it's going to be set in this way.
Right.
So, yeah.
So you self-published your book and then I caught the eye of a publisher or?
No, it's self-published.
Self-published. Okay. Oh.
It is. I went indie with it. So the two books are put out by me. And I've been lucky that I have an awesome publicist who's helping me out and getting an awesome podcast like where I'm in with you right now.
Right.
Signings and getting some more attention and things like that. I've had, like I said, pretty good reviews. Not a ton of them, but I've had good reviews. And there's nothing more exciting than seeing a review come up and you don't know the person. That's really great.
Right.
It's not a friend of a friend. It's not a parent. It's a stranger. And I've had some emails and people reach out to me on social media. And yeah, it's been great. So I do plan on, I would like to be a hybrid author. I think that in this day and age, a smart way to go. I have friends who are traditionally published only, and they are perfectly happy to not do any of like the editing and covers and things like that on their own. They're okay giving up all control.
Right.
Kind of a freak a bit. So I want to keep some books that I can do my way. Also, I don't want to be told what I can and cannot write. They've had some really great ideas that an editor has said, you know what, no. And they're just willing to maybe not write that right now. I want to write what I want. So I'm happy to, if I can work with a publisher, then that would be phenomenal and do books for them and then do what I want on the side as well.
Okay. Yeah, it's such a different landscape for writers nowadays. There's so much choice, like you mentioned, the traditional versus the self-published, and it can be a little confusing and daunting, I think, for a lot of people as well. But you're generally sounds like you're pretty happy with your experiences so far.
Yeah, that was my option. It was, if they're not going to touch it because it's, quote, too dark for YA or not fitting in the box, I don't want it to sit in a drawer. I really loved the book, so I really loved Ryann. I don't know why, or again, what it was about me. But I was like, no, I want to see what people think of her.
Yes, yes.
More people are twisted out there than you would think, because majority of people who are like, she's great, I want more, love that she's so horrible, were big cheerleaders of her. They're like, I want to see her do more. I know I shouldn't, but I want it. So
Yeah.
I actually had one very not good review on Goodreads. It was I think 1 or 2 stars, and her biggest criticism was, I have twin sons that are 11 and they wouldn't be scared. And I was like, oh, she wants even darker. All right. So I'll take that. Sure. Fine. That's okay. So,
but would she want her twin sons to be reading it? That's
apparently they would have yawned through it. So
wow.
What watch at home, but they were wanting the gore. Yeah. So
okay, well that's interesting because, and again, I think a lot of times some of the most horrific stuff is what you leave up to the reader's imagination. And you do get pretty close in some cases, but I think what you leave out is actually makes it seem more visceral than what's actually in the books.
It's so hard when you're writing. It's so hard when you're in it to know if you've struck a good balance, if you think people are going to want more, or, what you're doing. So it's always nice to hear that you kind of got something right.
Yeah. No, you got more than something. You got quite a bit.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's pretty well everything I had. I'll just wondering if there's anything else that you wanted to mention or plug that we haven't talked about yet, or any upcoming appearances.
I'm not sure when this is going out, but I am running a giveaway right now for a signed copy of Pretty Wicked and an Amazon gift card. So you can always go to my website at kellysharron.com to enter. So yeah. I'm doing a lot of signings in Lower Mainland in Vancouver. So if you're in that area, I will put that on my website as well under events.
Awesome.
So
okay. Well, I really enjoyed the talk, and I thank you for your patience with some of the technical difficulties we had, but it was a lot of fun.
My pleasure, Lou. I had a great time. Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome, and all the best with your future projects.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.